Every day, Maine's Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife's staff members report to Maine's fields, forests, lakes, and labs, and in today's episode, an echoey garage. I'm Katie Yates, and in Season 1 of Fishing Game Changers, I'm heading out with MDIFW's female staff members who are changing the face of conservation. Just a quick warning, this episode contains descriptions of a biologist collecting samples from harvested animals, and it may not be appropriate for all audiences.
Yeah, it's a lot of dead animals, at least in this position.
So what is your position exactly?
So I am an assistant regional wildlife biologist. It's something different every day. It's fun.
But it's fun.
On a cold, drizzly autumn morning, I'm visiting with wildlife biologist Sarah Boyden as she collects biological samples from deer. This is a unique experience and not one I was expecting when I agreed to hang out with Sarah for the day. According to Sarah, she learned the foundational skills and confidence essential to her success as a biologist while growing up on her family's dairy farm in Maine.
So you must have worked with a lot of animals growing up.
Yeah, mostly cows. And I think that was my foundation for sure. I mean, it definitely, taught me that you can do anything you want to do. You just got to learn the skill. Learned how to do all kinds of stuff. And nobody on the farm ever says you can't do that. They say, well, you're a warm body, so please go spread the manure or drive the silage truck or whatever. Like a lot of the stuff I do, it's pretty uncommon to see a woman do it, but those of us that have done it, we really don't know any different. It's just kind of what you do. Like someone gives you a job and you do it. So I guess it does come natural to me to just jump in and do something and not really think about the fact that sometimes it's unusual for a woman to be doing it, because everything I've done has been kind of unusual, You did what you had to do. But I learned a lot.
Sarah's work is varied. From helping count bumblebees and nesting eagles, tracking bats, and tracking down successful hunters to collect samples from harvested deer. Sarah seems like someone who could make anything seem fun, even this daunting task of collecting lymph nodes and teeth from deer heads. It's certainly not for everyone. Sarah tracks down hunters who recently tagged deer, works with taxidermists, and even gathers roadkill to collect these samples. Lymph nodes tell biologists about the deer's exposure to chronic wasting disease. Chronic wasting disease, or CWD for short, is a fatal brain disease affecting white-tailed deer and moose. Maine has actively monitored for CWD each year since 1999, and since that time has screened approximately 9,000 wild deer. Thus far, Maine proudly remains CWD-free. The teeth collected help age the deer.
So what is it that you're doing?
So right now during deer season we sample specific towns for chronic wasting disease. And the towns either have a big deer feeding operation or they have a deer farm. And both of those things kind of increase the risk of chronic wasting disease. And so we cut lymph nodes out of deer that were harvested in those towns. So I spend a lot of my time this time of year just racing around trying to find deer heads from specific towns so I can cut the lymph nodes out of them. We also take teeth, and that helps us look at age structure of the harvest. These are skun out deer heads, so I got them from a taxidermist. It's got no hair on it. It's just like a naked, meaty, bulgy eyeball deer skull. And he's still got ferns in his mouth, actually. Sort of, you can tell what his last meal was. He's got a mouthful of ferns. So what I'm doing is I flip him upside down and I look at the corner of his jaw, and then I feel for his Adam's apple, and we cut a line between the two, and I cut right straight down through the esophagus, and you peel it back, and once you get down through everything and peel it back, the two lymph nodes that we're looking for usually pop right out in a perfect world.
And that's a lymph node right there.
It's just kind of where they're located.
And why do you take the teeth?
The teeth are sent in to age the deer to get a really estimate age on each of the deer that we sample. It's kind of fun though. I mean, like, you sort of get into it, and when I'm here by myself, I just crank up the music and sing to myself and chop up the deer heads. So.
Do you want to just explain quickly, like, what chronic wasting disease is?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not a chronic wasting disease expert, but it's basically a protein that doesn't act like a normal protein. So if an animal gets it, it doesn't fold in the same way that a healthy protein does, and it eventually leads to holes in the brain. So it acts similar to mad cow disease, and they become symptomatic sort of right towards the end of the disease, and that's when you start to see just not acting right. They're really thin, they're not eating, they don't seem alarmed by anything, but they can carry it around for 2 years, kind of spreading it around. So we're kind of upping our sampling now. We're trying to pick up any adult roadkill deer, like any time of year near the border. So roadkill is a lot of times where it first pops up. Towards the end of the disease, the deer will they just won't be right in the head. The brain is full of holes, basically, and so a lot of times they'll wander out on the road, and they'll just kind of stand there and get hit by a car. So adult bucks are kind of our target. They're like the most likely of the deer herd to be carriers of it. And so we try to pick up adult buck roadkill. But during the hunting season, they've been monitoring the harvest for presence of chronic wasting disease, just as a precautionary thing. But so far, so good. Nobody's found it in the state of Maine.
So you collect these deer heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
yeah, totally normal. That's what I do. I know. It's good. It seems strange, but I have these big, like feed buckets, like farm buckets. And I drive around to a couple different meat cutters, and just twice a week I pick up whatever they have, whatever they've chopped off for me. And then some of the more remote towns, I'll actually have to, all of our tagging is electronic now, so I'll go on the record.
Maine recently implemented an electronic tagging system which updates immediately, letting game wardens or biologists like Sarah know when a deer has been tagged by a successful hunter.
Now, so I'll go on the record, the electronic tagging record every night, or I do it constantly actually, and I download the data for specific towns. And I think some people get a little bit alarmed by it because they will have tagged their deer, and then like an hour later I'm calling them up to say, hey, can I come get a sample from your deer? But it actually is really useful because, it's sort of real time. The areas that I search are like Western Maine, and so it ends up being a lot of New Hampshire and Vermont hunters. And so those guys and women will get their deer and then a lot of times take them back home, so it's hard to track the samples down. So it's really handy for me to be able to just look it up on my phone and call them up as soon as they've tagged it and get a sample from them. But it is a little.
But how did Sarah end up from the dairy farm to her super cool job? Inspired by time spent outdoors and on the Allagash River, she pursued an associate's degree at a college in Vermont.
I always knew I wanted to work with animals. I think it's pretty common, actually. People think they want to be a veterinarian, and then for me, I realized how much schooling it was, and that just was not for me. So I just got a general biology degree. And had no idea really what I was going to do afterwards once I graduated, and just kind of followed along where the opportunity led, and here I am. So after high school, nobody in my family had ever gone to college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't even know if I was going to go to college. So a friend of mine was in the Conservation Corps, the Maine Conservation Corps, and they lived in tents and built trails and ran chainsaws, and I was like, well, that's cool. I'd spent a bunch of time on the Allagash growing up and really liked being in the woods and being outside. So I took a break between high school and when I started college, and I did that for a couple years, and just really, reinforced my desire to be outside, like any excuse to be outside, and then decided that I had to kind of buckle down and go to college and actually get a degree if I wanted to keep going with this lifestyle. Had some great professors, and it was a very hands-on, experiential learning type of environment. We were always out every day surveying or sampling, or just classroom was outside in the environment. And I loved it, but it was expensive. So I I finished up an associate's there, and I ended up coming back to University of Maine Farmington, just down the road, and finished up a degree in biology here. But even then, I had no idea that I was going to do wildlife. I mean, when I first started putting out resumes after college, I had like the Conservation Corps experience. I'd done a ranger position out in the Olympic National Peninsula or National Park in Washington.
Like other staff I've interviewed, Sarah bounced around the United States, taking field positions wherever they were available. While working ski patrol for a resort, she secured a unique fisheries position in Utah, of all places, by surprising her interviewers with some high-tech skills.
Ski patrol for a really long time. Like I started ski patrol in high school, and I'd kind of done it all the way through. So, strangely enough, my first job that I got was a fisheries job with the Department of Wildlife Resources. I think that's what they're called, in Utah, based out of Moab. And it was a desert fisheries project. And the reason they hired me was because cell phones were kind of new. Like nobody really had cell phones way back then. And so I was working on ski patrol, and I had an interview coming up, and I was telling one of the guys I was working with, and he had a cell phone. He's like, well, why don't you just call him from my cell phone from the top of the mountain? So I did. I hiked up and did my interview from the top of the mountain, and that little fact came out, and they thought that was the coolest thing ever. And apparently that's why they hired me, because, I was on ski patrol, and I was calling from a cell phone. So, I mean...
High tech.
Yeah, I know. It's like really weird why you get hired for things sometimes, but...
Even though she's only been employed full-time for MDIFW for a couple of years, over a decade ago she started out seasonally capturing and collaring Canada lynx.
But from there, I came on to the lynx project with IFW for, it was like over the course of 3 years. I did a few seasons. The department did a big telemetry project on Canada lynx. I was located in the Clayton Lake area, so Muskwaykooks, right around the Allagash, and we captured and collared lynx and looked at reproduction, numbers, habitat use, just all the information we could gather about lynx at the time. And so did a couple seasons just trapping lynx with some folks up there. And so I did that for a few years and sort of cut my teeth with the department. But there weren't a lot of opportunities. There just wasn't a lot of turnover at that point, and I didn't have a ton of experience. So it took me a while to get back in with the department. So it was over 10 years, 15 years. I'm back.
I'm impressed by the expansive variation in work that a regional biologist like Sarah might do in order to assess the health of our game and non-game wildlife populations here in Maine. For over an hour, while I'm shivering in the cold garage and she's collecting lymph nodes, Sarah tells me some of her highlights, from working moose check stations to flying around surveying eagle nests.
You never know, like one day to the next. Like, so Charlie Todd led up a eagle nest survey.
Charlie Todd is the species specialist responsible for the dramatic stabilization of eagles in Maine. In 1962, only 27 nesting pairs were found across Maine. In the spring and summer of 2018, the department conducted its latest aerial survey of bald eagle nests and counted a robust 734 nesting pairs. You can learn more about this project at mefishwildlife.com/changers.
Eagle nest survey, and it was statewide, and I'd been talking to him, telling him that I was interested in jumping in the plane with him if he ever needed a second observer. So he calls up one day, oh yeah, we're gonna go on a little flight,
And flying around, and what are you looking for? Just looking down and seeing the big nests?
Yep, so a lot of the nests, Charlie knows where they are. He's studied them for so long, and he's amazing. And just from memory, I think he probably also has a map, but no big deal. The way I understood it was just we were going to pop out for an hour or something and fly around. And so they picked me up in Norridgewock, and I did a little flying, and we went up to Madison, just north of Norridgewock. And by the end of the day, we'd flown down the Kennebec and over by Augusta and then out down east. And then we ended up like off Isle Ho. And it ended up being like a 5 or 6 hour day, you know, like just flying low elevation flights across the state of Maine. And I was like, oh my God, my life is amazing. You know, like flying around with Charlie Todd, like looking down at Maine, the whole state of Maine, really. And basically, you work certain water bodies. So, like on the Kennebec, you'll fly down the length of the Kennebec, or you'll fly one side of the river and look down. And Charlie will say, you know, there should be a historic nest coming up in this big pine tree. And so you kind of target that area and look for the nest. And if it's not there, you look for, they'll often re-nest really close by. So you do some circles, low elevation circles, and look for a new nest. Or, you know, in areas where we don't necessarily have nest data, but it looks like really good habitat, you'll just fly low elevation and you'll pick them out. It's pretty amazing. Like when you first start doing it, they're hard to find, but then you sort of get the search image, and it gets a lot easier to find that kind of stuff. But so yeah, we just look for, they're the big stick nests basically, and count them and map their location. So yeah, that was a fun project.
So you really do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So it really is. It's whatever's going on, and but then we also have kind of our.
Sarah truly lives the adage "moose to mayflies," which describes the incredible scope of what our biologists do. This work, varied and a bit wild, requires dedication, passion, and an adventuresome personality.
Nice and slimy.
What is your favorite part of the work that you do?
Job. I mean, it's been the favorite part of everything I've ever done is those rare instances where you are just like out somewhere in the woods, on a mountain, by yourself, you know, and it's just quiet and you're just there. I think that's probably really the only reason I do this kind of work is, I mean, it's not the only reason, I don't want to say that, but that's my selfish reason. It's like, if I was free and I didn't have anything to do, that's what I would do. You know, I would just maybe take my dog and go out and be outside somewhere doing something. And like in high school, I used to, once I got a car, I would take my gazetteer and just pick a spot I'd never been to before and go check it out and go get out and see what you can see. So I think, you know, like with all my wildlife jobs, actually, it's usually going somewhere you've never been before and exploring and just being out. Nobody else is around, and I like that. I prefer that. I don't want anyone with. It's terrible. I love working by myself. I mean, I love the people I work with. I mean, wildlife people are just generally cool people, but just rarely get those, you know, those times when you can just be out by yourself and be somewhere wild, a little bit wild anyway. So I try as much as I can. That's my favorite part, I think. Yeah, so I know. It's crazy. It's a crazy life.
It is kind of a crazy life. I have to say, though, I did not expect to be doing this today.
It's not what you think, for sure. It wasn't what I thought. I mean, I kind of knew about this stuff, but if you like variety and something different every day, then yeah, it's fun.
I think people forget, too. You do it because you genuinely love and want to protect the resources.
I think so. I mean, it's also partly selfish. Like like I said, I like being outside and any excuse to do that, but it's like a bonus that what we're doing does help preserve wildlife and open spaces and hopefully helps engage other people in that as well. So it's more than my own sense of satisfaction, I guess. You know, it's also doing some good work. There's also there's so much to it. Like we just did the moose season. Let me write this down real quick before I get more baggies, but I'll leave this for me. So I worked with another regional biologist up in Quasic, and all these people are coming through with their moose, and they're all excited. And, it's cool to see it. It's cool to see people's just like passion about it. But there was this one young girl, she was 18, I think, and she came through with her grandfather, and she had the second biggest moose we'd seen the whole time. And I was like, yeah, lady. She was so proud, and her grandfather was so proud. And I mean, I love seeing that kind of stuff, just like seeing people's engagement with it and passion about it. And you meet all kinds of people here. And, they have all kinds of different reasons for why they do what they do, but I think it's just, I don't know, you love to see it. You love to see people's just investment in it, you know. I don't know.
Seeing people kind of connect with the resources that you help manage.
Yeah, or just like value it the same way that we do, I guess. And I don't know, it's just this common connection, like we can all get behind it, you know. There's a lot more to it than that, but you know what I mean? Yeah, someone asked me that recently, like, what do you love? Why are you passionate about your job? And I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. It's that kind of stuff. It's like when you step back and you stop and you think about it, like, yeah, that's really powerful. Like, you know, we want that. And for me, it's brought so much just to my life. Like, you know, that's what I want. That's where I want to be. Like, that's what just makes me happy. And so to see other people being able to do that, I think, and help them do that, and just experience that with them, it's pretty awesome.
To learn about the projects mentioned in this interview, visit mefishwildlife.com/changers. If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, take a moment to give this show a rating and let us know what you think. Next week, I sit down with a wildlife biologist who had an off-grid upbringing that inspired a lifelong love for the outdoors.